Hello to you, Harry Tanguy here. Thank you for joining me today, and welcome. This edition of I'm sort of getting towards a Thursday 7 o'clock as a bit of a regular slot. Sometimes you go from one week to another and you think there's not a lot to talk about, and others, oh my God, like this last week, there's a lot to talk about. And it's been quite useful actually to have a couple of days just to let things settle and wait until that really unpopular thing called facts come out. And we're going to be talking about the Clapham Vigil protest, because they're two separate things, and that's what's become very clear. However, the media don't like you blaming the media, but the media, if they snuffed a bit of gossip out straight away, if they just got rid of it by saying, well, no, these are the facts, they're not going to make a lot of money with that. There's not going to be many views, are they? So depending on the way, especially left-wing media, I mean, if you look at, say, for example, The Guardian, let's look at this, because they're great, aren't they? There's nothing. We'll just discuss this sort of things, getting very much into the protest in a second. But if you just look at this, I mean, this is police clash with mourners at Sarah Everard Vigil in London. There's nothing more inflammatory than that. That is a beaut for The Guardian. It sort of really feeds the narrative beautifully, gets everyone worked up. And that thing, do you know what, called emotion? Emotion is so important. Emotion is more important than fact. And that's where I think we've got a bit of a problem with victimisation being the new currency in the world. The more of a victim, the more powerful. And you know, the most devastating part of that is genuine victims who really are victims, are getting lost in the melee. And we need to stop this. We need to stop just throwing words out there as I'm a victim, and then everyone pushing back and going, oh, we can't challenge it. We can't even challenge it with fact. So luckily, I haven't got a boss, so I can actually challenge things, and I can challenge it with fact. And yeah, I was a police officer, 30 years, frontline, and I did public order. I wasn't in the Met. I'm Devon and Cornwall. I'm in a counties force. But in a way, it's quite nice, because even though I worked in London up until recently very regularly, because I was on VIP protection, so I know London pretty well. I know all the police stations. And cops are cops wherever you go. You don't go to London and go, God, they're a right bunch of idiots, you know? You get on like that because it's that same sort of mentality, that same, and we would not put up with, I mean, I don't want to work in a place where they're just, they're there for other reasons, apart from to do that community bit thing. Because guess what? They're normal family people. They're just normal people like you and me who join the police. But certain people think that at some point we're injected with a serum that turns us into these horrible, nasty people that should be avoided. Now, I'm going to get a quick caveat here. I don't want to sort of talk about Sarah Everard on this, because I think it's a totally different issue. That is a tragic, awful incident that occurred that is being investigated, and I don't want to talk about it. And to be honest, it's sort of what went on after 6 o'clock at Clapham was an absolute disgrace. And it wasn't the police as far as I can see, but I would think that. But I'm going to tell you why. And I think slowly people are turning around to that. I think there were very genuine people at the vigil, and there were sisters and mothers. There were concerned people. There was, people concerned about the situation. It's good that we talk about it, because I'll tell you now, even though the facts of women being murdered in this country are between 150, 200 a year, too many. And yes, they're mostly by men. That over 65 million people is relatively low. However, I am fully aware, because of the women I talk to, my daughter and my wife and our friends and our colleagues, there's hardly a woman out there who can say that she hasn't been molested in some way. You cannot go to a festival or a concert without someone grabbing your ass or something. I think is absolutely disgusting. And I cannot imagine, if I'm in a group of friends and I saw someone doing that, I'd be horrified. I just don't, I know my friends wouldn't do that, you know? So what is going wrong there? I don't know. Has it always occurred? Probably. but that's not good enough, is it? So I get that. Where I have a problem is who you blame and how you sort it. Because if we are dealing with fact here, you're talking about 65 million people where there's I think it's 80,000 per prison population, relatively small level. There's lots of, there's a different argument, isn't it? But if you have people who are violent, commit sexual offences, and they're in our public, and the same people who are claiming it's the police and they're terrible are probably the same people saying we should release everyone from prisons, then there is always a risk. And you will never eliminate that risk because humans are humans. So I'm just trying to think without emotion. There is a problem. How do we deal with it? Is it a massive problem? Do you know what? I think the unreported issues are there genuinely, because what's the point? I don't know who it was. They grabbed me in a crowd, but I felt disgusted. And I get that. I totally get that. But the fear of women being murdered is becoming more than the fact and the chances, which doesn't make it any more palatable for the people involved, of course, and the families, which would mean everything, wouldn't it? It destroys your world. But remember, in the police deal with people, the victims like this. So here we go. I think we had a situation where there was a vigil, and yes, there was lots of, it shouldn't go ahead. It's and can we just get something straight here? We're in a democratic country, elected government, and the government set the rules. It was, I'm sure it was an all-party agreement about lockdown. There's disputes when it should have been earlier, or whatever. But that's how we are. Just because you don't agree with that doesn't mean that this is not a democracy. It wouldn't be a democracy if you just were able to do what the hell you liked. Okay, that wouldn't be a democracy, because there's plenty of people who are going to suffer because of what you think you're doing right, but actually as a collective has been decided it's not right. Okay, such as freedom of the street, such as reclaiming these streets. So here's Sisters Uncut. I'm not going to go into them. Look at their tweets. They don't like the police much. They say that, they put big lists of how many women have been murdered by the police. Let me give you just a small example. If a person of any sex is arrested, and there's about 600,000 arrests in this country a year, I believe. And these are some of the most violent, mentally ill, or not and mentally ill, vulnerable people there are. There is no vulnerable and non-vulnerable, believe me. There's just aggressive, nasty people. There are plenty of opportunities for them not to declare that they've just whacked the drugs down them, something burst in their stomach, or let's say they've just taken on somebody. I'm not talking about women, it could be men, whatever. They've just they've had a big scrap with the cops because the cops have been called because somebody is being really violent in a pub or whatever. They're then arrested. They're then called into the police in custody. They're put in the cells. And then in the cells, they can see that they've had a heart attack. All right, they're having a heart attack. They're not well. They go straight to the hospital. They die 3 days later. Now, according to the rules of Sisters Uncut, if that was a woman involved, then that was, or any death, and that goes for any other extremist group, it's a murdered by the police, that is. I mean, this is, and everything between. Okay, so let's get this in context, because fact, again, instead of emotion, you might have a reason to have emotion, but it should never overtake fact. And this is where I think the problem where wokeism is. Wokeism used to be about thinking about others, being compassionate, and it was good. It was nice, wasn't it? Unfortunately, fact got ignored, and then suddenly wokeism got so much, and they were using it as a word to say, well, I'm right, you're wrong, and ignore the statistics and the fact. So when I say woke, it's in the derogative form because it has changed over time. Okay, so basically, we're looking at this one here, Sisters Uncut. Meet at 6 p.m. at the bandstand on Clapham Common. Bring flowers, candles, artwork, your sadness, banners, tissues, and umbrellas, and face masks. Beautiful. Can't argue with that. And all your rage. Okay, well, there's the same argument you could say, and it's the same argument, isn't it, as with Trump, wasn't it? With we must go and fight that, and some politicians were saying, well, you're saying, come on, we must fight the cause. But others saying, no, they were saying, go up there and fight. And I know there's lots more stuff with Trump. But this, you could be argued the same way. knowing the history of this group and looking at their own tweets, I'm not going to say anything about it. You just look at their own tweets. You'll get they don't like police much. All right. There's suddenly, and all genders welcome, right? There's more the merrier. Reclaim these streets, hashtags. So suddenly it's coming away. Reclaim these streets. What's that got to do with a vigil? And why is it at 6 p.m, I wonder? Well, okay, we'll sort of see why it's at 6 p.m. Because I think 6 hours where the police were involved and where the vigil occurred, it was about 6 hours, no issues at all. And it was very respectful. And there were just dots and splatters of like mostly women officers. And it was no issues at all. And then as it got towards 6 o'clock, we were talking, it was a peaceful protest for 6. And then at 4 p.m, there was about 200 people. All right. And you'd think after 6 hours and 6 hours, it's sort of getting towards the evening now. We're in COVID area here, right? So there's a lot of proportionality and there's no issues. So you have to ask yourself, why then at 5:30 p.m, 10 police officers, there were 10 police officers at 5:30, and there was a steady streaming of people coming to answer that sort of tweet and others because it was going around quite avidly, you know. At 6 p.m, a man is booed by the crowd because he's trying to make a political speech. Not the time, not the place. This is a vigil. Can we just look at the definition of the vigil? Okay, let's have a look at this. A vigil. What does a vigil mean? Well, the act of keeping awake at times when sleep is customary also. A period of wakefulness, right? An event or a period of time when a person or group stays in a place and quietly waits, prays, etc. Especially at night, a candlelight vigil kept vigil at her bedside. Okay, so that's a vigil. That's a vigil. Okay. The problem was when we have a look at this, and we'll get to how this occurred in a moment. Okay, I'm not entirely sure that actually comes under the definitions or anywhere near a vigil. So what we're saying is things have changed, okay? Because 6 p.m, this man was booed off the stage or whatever. So he didn't, whether he was on the stage, whether he got there, but he was caught away. Now, I can tell you now, there's a lot of very natural public order commanders out there in their armchairs, and they think the Met just turn up and make it up as they go along. No, there's a strategic plan, there's a tactical plan, and there's an operational plan, all right? And it was basically all that coordinates, so people know what they're doing, and they will look at it and they would think, right, how do we reduce, we've got the COVID issue in contrast with the vigil. So how do we actually accommodate both of those as safely as possible? There will be those who just don't think that goes on. They just think they make it up. It doesn't, right? There are after a long period of experience in public order, you then do this commander's course, which is weeks and weeks, and you are tested in various scenarios and things. It's really, really strong. And this is why I'm thinking this is where the Met cannot win with that incident. Okay. After the man was booed off, there was 500 people with a minute's silence. And there's pictures out there. I'm not going to bring all that up, but beautiful, wonderful. Isn't that the moment then to just start petering away? Or is that the time where you want 500 more people coming on and people like Sisters Uncut who then encourage these people along? And then now we've got 1,000 people and they're treading all over the flowers, and the Met are thinking, the police there are thinking, this isn't good now because we're getting into the evening, and now there's, who brings a megaphone to a vigil? Yeah? Well, that's not sort of picked up much, is it? Who brings a megaphone to a vigil? So it got to a point then where officers are then having to go to the bandstand, because this was the nucleus of everything. People were trying to get onto the bandstand and they were on their megaphones and they were saying, you know, and you've even got Patsy, bless her heart, saying, you know, why should we leave? We're not leaving, are we? The police should leave. That's, you know, that's like, it's not a vigil. It's disrespectful because you've just taken over what the whole thing was all about. You're blaming the wrong people. The Sisters Unite was saying they had a chant. Sisters Unite will never be defeated. Yeah, thanks. How disrespectful to the vigil. 6:30 p.m. Police officers requested bandstand people to go home. This is no longer a vigil. It's an unlawful gathering. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Now, let's have a look at this. This is a gentleman here that, now I know this police officer, many years experience, and just, I don't know him personally, I've heard about him. He's a sterling chap, many years experience. And I think it's just quite disgusting how someone can treat another human being like this. You'd think it would be the police at the young lady there. He's you know, the experiences he's had in the police, the experiences he's gone through, the scenes he's witnessed. And this is how someone who looks as though they probably just out of secondary school or in university or just out, this is how they treat someone in this position. There's some F-bomb warnings here.
No, I never said that. I said I wouldn't need to be here if you were going to go home. I'm just as ashamed as anybody that that's a police officer. However, this is no longer a vigil. It's an unlawful gathering. That's in pandemic. It's in the pandemic.
Okay. I mean, I've heard enough. It's just outright disrespectful. It's disgusting behaviour. Where's the vigil? And what are they whining about? Is that because the police have turned up? Because whatever you think about the COVID rules, we're in a democracy. And there's an awful lot of people who aren't on social media who are saying, no, actually, I agree with this. And let's just wait until these, and let's go with the science. Hey, how about that? So, but that's another argument. Not interested. This is the law at the moment, and you're breaking the law. You've had your vigil. Most basically, the accuracy of it, the vigil occurred before you even turned up. And now you've got individuals like this who go, free ticket to give the police a good old bashing. And do you know what the frightening thing is about this? Is that she's not interested in facts. She's interested in stirring up trouble, throwing her absolute hysterical hatred at those police officers who do not deserve this. Do that in any other country, good luck to you. But that's not an excuse. It's not, well, we're better than another country, but we damn well are. But look at that. And my experience, it says that it's a very, very gradual move. It's the gentle, you won't get this on the television. You will if you look hard enough on social media, but you don't get it on News at 10 and whatever, because it's not in the papers and whatever. It's because it's boring. When these officers go out and say, can you just move? Can you start going home now, please? Because we're worried about, there's too many numbers here. And you're just getting this, blah, 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 blah. Could you just move now? Right. Okay. So the thing is, when you get headlines like The Guardian and all this sort of thing, and then you get others saying how the aggressive police, went into the crowd and turned this wonderful vigil to this, how disrespectful, when it was all about women, and now this. But we're getting to the truth here a little bit now. The women involved with the vigil had mostly gone. And now you've got this new bunch here that are just out for trouble, but are quite happy to link onto that and use it, that victimization thing, and use it for their own means in order to push them forward. And fortunately, because of this extra woke thing we're living in at the moment, the media don't want to even touch it. They don't want to be the ones standing out going, well, no, that's not fair. Because companies are going to stop advertising with them, thinking, we don't want to be associated with this. We want to go along with this huge, great narrative that's going on in the world at the moment. Fact. Such a dirty word, isn't it? Such a dirty word. So you've got, let's just see what happened from there. Let's just get rid of that one a minute. And then you've got this young lady here. I wasn't going to put her on because I don't want to advertise her anymore, but she's pretty famous at this point, isn't she? Let's have a look at this. Here we go. Let's see if I've heard. So Patsy Stevenson. So, I mean, there is plenty of footage on there to show who there. She's an actor, presenter, model, dancer, and I think she's more into extra or whatever. She's not someone just going along to Vigil. There's plenty of footage out there saying that she wants to reclaim the streets and take this action. And there's lots of sort of quite activist type speech about it. I'm not going to go into it too much, to be honest, but there is plenty of footage apart from to say feeding the narrative is this. And this is what I mean about this victimization being the currency of modern world at the moment. The real victims, the genuine victims, guess who the victims were? What this was all about. Haven't taken the news over because people like this individual have. This is where she was reported. She was terrified. Good on Sky for bringing her up on this one.
Because we're about to walk into a crowd of people, and I don't know whether that crowd are gonna like
just after her arrest
go against what's going on. And me arrested, I had no idea. So I was worried for the safety of others, and I did say to the crowd, he said he's got his hand on his baton, just be careful.
Oh yeah.
And then they said she's antagonising the crowd, please move her back. I wasn't trying to antagonise anyone, I was just making sure everyone was safe.
Well, that's very kind of Patsy to take on the whole police initiative, and because British police officers are notoriously going around beating someone. Have we seen any sticks yet? I'm sure if this was in any country, we'd have seen police dogs with only. No, was this CS spray? No, it wasn't necessary, was it? That's why it wasn't necessary. What have we got? We'll look at that a little bit later about what we've got. But let's just see what she's got to say now. Absolutely feeding the narrative of victimization and whatever. The genuine victims, those women who are still being, who are being basically sexually assaulted in clubs, pubs. They feel they can't go home a certain way. Quite right. I was speaking to someone who. Recently and said, well, someone comes to the door, I'm not going to answer it because they're in the fluorescent and I don't know who they are. And I'm thinking, well, if I was a guy, I'd have opened that. But women still feel uncomfortable with that. That's a natural thing. That is disgusting. And it's a shame it has to be that. Is how do we deal with it? Not this way, because you are distracting it from the attention from where the real problem is and where potential solutions are.
Shots that we're showing, you don't look terrified. What was going through your mind?
They don't look terrified, does she?
To be honest, I was terrified, but then when I looked up at the press, I had a small thought of
Patsy.
like, if this gets out, I might be, interviewed or something.
Yeah, if this gets out, I might be interviewed. Well done. It's manipulative. Where our current press system, not all of them, let's caveat, not all of them, but not being funny, if I was the head of a massive media machine, I'd be doing exactly the same. It's not the job I choose to do. I prefer to have a little bit more, but I watch the media myself. But do you know what I do? I take it with a grain of salt. I think, it's too early. Let's wait for the facts. Okay, but so what were they? Were they using CS or well, we know they weren't, were we? So what were they doing? And we'll talk about the actual, what is involved with policing when they get through a crowd. Let's see what's happening here.
No way. No fucking way.
F-bombs here. Now you can see, right, so you've got the police officers here. They're trying to get to the back. And now there's people to stop the protesters from winding everyone up and bandstand, including old Patsy, bless her heart, because she had a megaphone, I think, at one point. And no, I don't know. I'll take that back. I'm not sure if she had the megaphone, but there were people on the megaphone. And there are individuals who will wind up the crowd to get them going. And so rather than the police go in and clear a crowd, what they do with, like, same with football crowds and things, is they go in and just take the instigators out. If I was on public order in Plymouth on Union Street or whatever, and it was kicking off, and I knew that, he's bound again, he's causing trouble again, and everything flares up, it gets everyone's emotions up, doesn't it? It gets everyone, well, yes, you're right, and this is, we shouldn't put up, and it's gone past that stage of rationality at this stage. People are just angry, and your few police officers that you turned out are now getting absolutely subjected to horrendous stuff like the gent earlier. Disgusting, unacceptable, and yet that seems to be condoned. It's all about the police condoning being. He's a human being. He's not beating you over with a stick. He's not kicking. He's not punching you. He's not. He's being as completely proportionate as anyone could possibly be. And then if they didn't do that, there might have been some claims that you treat protests differently. And I'm not saying that hasn't happened in the past, because I've had my own critics with the fact that I think there was some quite inexperienced senior management in the Met middle ground where they were starting to police the cause behind the protest as opposed to the protest. And you should always police the threat via the threat assessment and how to deal with that. But they were so worried about a political backlash, and this is the problem. And this is the problem why there's people like Sadiq Khan, who the police are answerable to, Cressida Dick. It's madness. It's madness that you've got somebody who has got no experience or knowledge of this sort of thing. And Cressida Dick, who I'm two minds about, I was completely for her before, but I think she's in an impossible position. She's got to accountable to the government, accountable to the public, and then accountable to this guy who's got a completely different agenda because he's thinking votes. It's madness. They need to change the system. Political rant over. But what I'm saying here, if you look at that, it was just pushing back. But what you'll get is people, the victim, the fake victim, all right, and there are them out there. They are out there. Fake victims. They take the advantage. They're so unscrupulous. The real victims get ignored. They get just missed in the melee of victimhood. It's the modern currency. And it's like, you've hurt me. Screaming. And suddenly I'd love to put any reasonably fit human being, and in this circumstances, a woman, with you and two of your friends, to say, right, arrest her, take her, but make it look pretty. Don't make it look untidy, for goodness sake. Good luck. Arms everywhere, get off, lashing out, screaming. You've touched me. Everything they can think of to make it look a disaster. And if you look behind all these police officers, camera. One word out of place, one hand out of place. And we've got that emotion coming into it again. Fact is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. That's the problem. This is the problem we've got. It's not only in the UK, it's European. I know it's at least European because I've got relatives in France who say it's identical situation. So here we go. And then, of course, this went on to this. Again, this is the Vigil, all right? This is the newspaper, police, and this is where Priti Patel said, it didn't look, it was terrible. We're going to have it. She didn't say the police were at fault, but certainly blooming well implied it. And everyone is coming onto is that what people are saying? I better not. It looked sort of like they didn't have much to go with, to be honest. They didn't have much choice, but, you can be cancelled overnight here now. That's it. I can't be, because if this goes tomorrow, I couldn't care. I don't earn any money on it, In fairness, I think in the last 8 months, I've learned £8 and I don't even know if I'm going to get it because the link's I don't do it for that. I might do it slightly, because if you do like the channel, buy that book, Farms and Fatals, bestseller. Thank you very much. Released it in April. Get it on Amazon in all forms you could possibly want, all apart from hardback. Right, that's that sell, because that's boring. You don't want to know about that. But let's have a look at this one. Let's look at this Vigil, just to show that it doesn't always appear in the news, does it? Doesn't always appear in the news. probably seen this on social media, because finally things are coming out. The facts are coming out, okay? Because the Met, they can't just show stuff like this. Because
oh, what's this guy? What's this guy? Run.
So what we've got is basically, in a vigil, the police have got to deal with this. They can't show all their footage, their side of things, because it's data protection, it's stuff like that. So there's this constant one-sided narrative. So my message to you out there is, look at the facts. Wait until things come out. If you feel your emotion coming into it, we're living in one of the safest countries in the world. But that doesn't mean there's nothing we can't improve. But with these knee-jerk reactions about 6 o'clock curfews, that ain't gonna stop the sexual offences, believe me. All right? I mean, it's a ridiculous thing, because people think that's the solution. That's the solution. Brilliant. No, it isn't. Ladies and gents, thanks very much indeed. Follow me on my Twitter page. Please like, subscribe to this, and I really appreciate it for your support. And we will see you later.